Hello, everyone. This is Independent Conservative. Thank you all for joining me once again. I had to take a little break there, but I'm thankful to God that I'm back. And I want to respond to the fact that a very controversial situation with uh, Gaza and Hamas and Israel. Yeah, a bunch of controversy concerning this. But at any rate, I want to respond to the video that this audio that I'm going to let you guys listen in on President Donald Trump, where apparently the remaining hostages, Jewish hostages, have been released and returned home. Evidently, Hamas has held them hostage for quite some time, and now they have been released. So I'm going to read a little bit of this article to you guys. I'm going to let you guys listen in on some of President Donald Trump's words in response to this. And then I'm going to give you guys my reaction to this entire dilemma with Gaza and the Israelis and so forth. And there's so much controversy, and I want to give my spin on this. Does anyone care about my spin? Probably not. But hey, I'm going to give it anyway. So let's get right into this. So let's get right into it. It says U.S. President Donald Trump told Israeli's parliament, the Knesset, on Monday that, quote, this is not only the end of a war, but the end of an age of terror and death and the beginning of an age of faith and hope. So let's get right into this.
Let me also convey my tremendous appreciation for all of the nations of the Arab and Muslim world that came together to press Hamas to set the hostages free and to send them home. We had a lot of help. We had a lot of help from a lot of people that you wouldn't suspect, and I want to thank them very much for that. It's an incredible triumph for Israel and the world to have all of these nations working together as partners in peace. And it's pretty unusual for you to see that, but it happened in this case. This was a very unusual point in time, a brilliant point in time. Generations from now, this will be remembered as the moment that everything began to change, and change very much for the better. Like the USA right now, it will be the golden age of Israel and the golden age of the Middle East. It's going to work together.
So that's just a few seconds of a speech that he gave. I'm going to read a little bit more of this. Trump spoke as the 20 remaining living Israeli hostages returned to their families in emotional scenes. Trump ended to an extended standing ovation and a trumpet salute accompanied by Israeli President Isaac Herzog, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and Speaker of the Knesset Amir Ohana. Netanyahu, a member of the legislative body, took his seat in the audience with Herzog, I may be butchering these names, and Ohana, accompanying Trump to the podium. Several red, quote, "Make America Great Again" hats were visible in the gallery among spectators. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu thanked Trump for his support for Israel over the years. A, quote, partial list that included his role in the hostage deal, for recognizing Israeli rights in Judea and Samaria, for the Abraham Accords, and for opposing Iran's nuclear ambitions and attacking Iran's nuclear sites. Netanyahu added, quote, Donald Trump is the greatest friend that Israel has ever had in the White House. Netanyahu praised Trump's peace plan for Gaza, calling it, quote, a proposal that ends the war by achieving our objectives, a proposal that opens the door to an expansion of peace in our region and beyond our region. And I'm going to stop right there. That is taken from Breitbart News, who reportedly the editor is Jewish. And so, and I say that, I'm not saying that in a way of being sarcastic, but, you know, sometimes when, with a lot of the different narratives that are being spun in reference to Gaza, the Palestinians, in reference to the Israelis, when you mention that, you know, some of the viewers here might be in opposition to the Jews as a whole, or They might be like looking at Breitbart News as a biased news source. And I'm pretty sure to some extent it is biased towards the Jews. I'm pretty sure, because if the editor is Jewish and perhaps he may be, the editor may be biased in certain ways when it comes to criticizing the Jews, okay, or the Jewish government rather, for some of the things that they may have been doing that was not right, that was not good. So yeah, evidently these hostages have been returned to their families, and that's a good thing, and I'm thankful to God for that. But now, in terms of, I want to respond to what President Donald Trump said in reference to this is a golden age and we're going to work in peace. Will that happen? I don't know. It's possible. It's possible that that could happen. Okay, but I'm not sure. The wars, if you will, the tension between these two factions has been going on for many years, and I'm going to get a little bit biblical here. I mean, it goes all the way back to the book of Genesis. It goes all the way back to Ishmael. It goes all the way back to Jacob, and it goes all the way back to many years, okay? Centuries in the past, in the making. So I'm not going to get into the theology of that. But what I want to do, I want to talk a little bit about the tension that has been sparked, rather, between certain factions, certain conservative YouTube creators, content creators. I don't know if any of you guys are aware of Brandon T. Tatum, Mark Dice, two YouTube content creators who I've subscribed to. I have great admiration for the both of them. I've been following the both of them for some years now, and I thank God for them. I've learned a lot from the both of them. I have all of Mark Dice's books. I don't know if Brandon T. Tatum has written any books. Please, let me know in the comment section below. But I want to respond in addition to the information I just gave about the remaining Jewish hostages being returned, and President Donald Trump talking about this is going to be the golden age of peace between the two factions of Israel and Palestine. We'll have to see about that. But I want to respond to kind of like a sidebar, if you will, with the situation with Mark Dice and Brandon T. Tatum and some other conservative YouTubers who are not very supportive of Israel and calling out certain things about what the Israeli government is doing. Now, it's really hard because you look at this and it's like, well, it's so hard. I'm trying to put this in a way where I don't bayonet my own brain with something, with saying the wrong things, or rather saying something that's not accurate. It's really hard to get the best kind of, you really don't know who's telling the truth or not. It's really hard to say. Now, the accusation of Mark Dice is that the Israeli government is, and I'm quoting Mark Dice's words, is engaged in ethnic cleansing, if you will, of Gaza, in ethnic cleansing. In other words, according to, from what I understand what Mark Dice is saying is that in his video, I was listening to what he was saying. He said essentially that the Israeli government under Netanyahu is engaged in ethnic cleansing of Gaza. And when he made that statement, ethnic cleansing, I thought about, okay, the Israeli government is bombing innocent Palestinians. Okay. Could that be true? It could be. I don't know. I'm not over there. So I don't know. I'm pretty sure that Mark Dice has information and intel that I don't have. Okay. On the other hand, what I try to do, and also what Mark Dice is accusing Brandon T. Tatum of, is his seemingly blind support of Israel, and the fact that he is trying to get Tucker Carlson canceled or silenced or fired, if you will, or removed from Turning Point USA, trying to get him removed from there. Okay, so that's the big hoopla going on there. Okay, but at any rate, when Mark Dice made that statement, I thought there was a very strong statement that the Israeli government is bombing, or was basically bombing, people in Gaza and innocent Palestinians in Gaza. That was the impression that I got. Now, what I try to do, I try to look at other conservative news sources to try to tie all the knots together, if you will. Put all the dots together, try to make sense of all of this, because like I said earlier in the introduction to this video, there's so many streams of information from all sides. It's really hard to decipher who's telling the truth and who's not. So there's another conservative news source known as Skywatch TV. And Skywatch TV is a faction of Skywatch TV, actually is the name of the actual organization, or conservative organization. Not going to get into the detail of all of that, but Skywatch TV is a Christian-based organization, if you will, that looks at prophetic prophecies, modern-day prophecies from a biblical prophetic perspective, okay? One of the programs of Skywatch TV is the program known as 5 and 10. 5 and 10 is a news source that it's like it's 10 minutes of news, usually 10 minutes, sometimes longer, of news, 5 stories in 10 minutes, basically what it is. 5 stories in 10 minutes for the most part. Sometimes it'll go longer than 10 minutes, but sometimes it doesn't. But it's essentially 5 stories in 10 minutes. It's led by a man by the name of Derek Gilbert. Okay, I believe Derek Gilbert is an actual trained journalist. Now, does that mean that Mark Dice isn't a trained? From what I understand about Mark Dice is that, from what I read in some of his books, and his background is that he's his major was in communications, and he's according to the background that I have read in his books, he's a media analyst. He analyzes the media. Okay. Now, Derek Gilbert stated, who I believe is an actual trained journalist, and he's a Christian journalist too, as well as Mark Dice. Mark Dice is a Christian, professed Christian. That Derek Gilbert mentioned that before the Israeli government went into Gaza, okay, before they did this is in one of the news sources, one of the news shows that Derek Gilbert was giving. He said before the Israeli military went into Gaza, okay, they removed hundreds of thousands of Palestinians out of Gaza in order to focus on Hamas and the hotspots in Hamas in order to take them out. So clearly that is a rebuttal of the assumption of Mark Dice that Netanyahu is involved in ethnic cleansing in Gaza. So who's telling the truth there? If in fact Derek Gilbert was stating that hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were removed out of Gaza, innocent Palestinians. We're not talking about soldiers and so forth. We're talking about innocent Palestinians and families and so forth were removed out of Gaza so that the Israeli military could focus on Hamas and the hotspots in that area in order to take them out. Does that sound like ethnic cleansing? Does it sound like, no? My point is, who's telling the truth? I don't know. Now, in my personal opinion, I'm going to be quite frank with you. In my personal opinion, I would adhere to what Derek Gilbert said. I believe that, yes, the Israeli government was going in and bombing Gaza. They was going in and just doing their things, okay? But I don't think they was going in there and bombing innocent civilians, knowingly bombing innocent civilians simply because they were involved in quote unquote ethnic cleansing. Now, can I prove that? No, I can't prove that, but I'm led to believe that Derek Gilbert is a stickler for proper news, since from what I understand, he's a journalist, and journalists have to really have their stuff together. Now, does that mean that just because he's a journalist, does that mean that he's telling the truth with everything? Of course not. Journalists have been known to twist facts on both sides. Okay, but in my gut feeling, I believe he's telling the truth. And with that being the case, as I've said to people in the past, I don't believe that the Israeli government is going around just, arbitrarily bombing and murdering Palestinians. And even if that was the case, we got to remember this. I want to say this, and I want to try to be as clear as I possibly can. I think we have to be careful on both sides. Now, I'm going to speak from a Christian biblical perspective here. My view on the nation of Israel, modern day Israel, is this. I base it on the biblical premise that God called Abraham out of the land of the Chaldeans. So Abraham was a pagan. He was not Jewish when he was a pagan. God called him out based on his sovereign purpose and plan and told Abraham that he would make him a mighty nation. Those of us that understand the biblical narrative, we understand that Abraham is the progenitor of the Jewish nation. That's the bottom line. We understand that. The promise God made to Abraham was that his people would be a mighty people and a mighty nation. That he would make him a mighty nation. And that he would give them, if you read further into the narrative of the book of Genesis, that God would give the nation of Israel the land of what was known back in those days, in Bible days, as the land of Canaan. Today it is known as, it's been renamed Palestine. But in Bible days, it was named the land of Canaan. God said he would give them that land. Okay, that's what God told Abraham. He promised Abraham that he would give his people, his nation, the nation of Israel, the land of Canaan, and they would be as numerous as the sands of the sea. Okay. However, when the law code came on the scene under Moses, God specifically stated in the book of Old Testament, book of Deuteronomy, you can read chapters 28 and chapters 29, that if the nation of Israel obeyed God, they would inhabit the land and be blessed. I'm just paraphrasing it. If they disobeyed God, if they disobeyed him, God would drive his people out of the land of Canaan into other foreign nations, and they would become like a spectacle. Okay, that is exactly what happened due to the nation of Israel's disobedience, due to their idol worship and worshiping idol gods. God drove them from the land of Canaan. So they were gone. And he scattered them among the nations. That's why you had different kinds of Jews. You have Russian Jews and this kind of Jew, and that's because God scattered them among the nations. I'm just condensing some of this material and trying to explain what my stance is on it. But he said that the scripture teaches that God would return the nation of Israel back to the land of Canaan, which is now Palestine. He said he would return them back to the land of Canaan, which is now Palestine. It is believed by many Bible scholars that promise, that prophetic promise, took place in 1948 when the nation of Israel, and like I said, I'm omitting some details. You can study that on your own about the, I forget the name of the term, something deal or something like that. It had to do with the nation of the British nation and the Zionists, Israelis or whatever, some kind of deal that they made. But at any rate, according to many Bible scholars and Bible prophecy experts, believe that prophecy came to pass in 1948 when Jews from all different nations began to start coming back and gathering back to the land of Canaan, the land of Palestine, as God promised. Now, like I said, many Bible prophecy experts and theologians believe that was the fulfillment of God's promise to Abraham, not to the nation of Israel. Now, let me make this point clear. Many of the Jews, ethnic Jews rather, that were Jewish naturally, ethnically, that were coming back from these different countries were not Christian. Now, I'm not saying all of them. I said many. Some of them were atheists. Some of them were Fabian socialists. Some of them were into the occult. Some of them were Marxists. As a matter of fact, what a lot of people don't understand and might not know is that the Frankfurt School of Marxism in the 1920s, the Frankfurt School Marxist professors that left Germany, Nazi Germany in the 1930s and migrated here to America, what may be omitted by a lot of people is the fact that these Frankfurt School Marxist professors were Jewish. And that one of the reasons why they left Germany was because obviously Hitler was there. And Hitler was in the process of doing what he called a true ethnic cleansing of Jews. And I'm not going to go into the detail of all of that. Okay. Some of you are already aware of that. And so they fled Germany, and they fled Nazi Germany, came here to America, and they began to infiltrate they were placed in many of the post-secondary universities throughout the country, like Columbus and Harvard and others, and they were assisted by a man by the name of John Dewey, who was also a socialist. Now, you may be asking, what's so big about the fact that these Frankfurt School Marxists were Jews? Well, many of these Frankfurt School Marxists were ethnic Jews, but they were atheists. And they were deriving their belief systems off of Karl Marx, who is the founder of communism. Now, you already know where I stand on communism. What is my point? I'm not trying to demonize. What I'm trying to show is that all the ethnic Jews that came back from these other countries did not come back as believers in the God of the Bible. Some of them were atheists. Some of them were Marxists. Some of them were into a Jewish mysticism known as the Kabbalah. All right, some of them were in all these kind of things. Okay. And with that being said, with them, many of them being ethnic Jews, that means that they were in a position to do things. Rather, let me resort this back to the Israeli government. Were in positions to do things that were not biblical or godly, and because of that, a lot of times people miss the point of the bigger picture of what is going on. My stand on this is this: I stand on the Bible and what God promised to Abraham, even if many of the ethnic Jews or the Jewish government, which is probably filled with a lot of Jews, ethnic Jews that may not be born again Christians, that may be into Jewish mysticism, that may be into the occult, that may be Fabian socialists, that may be cultural Marxists or communists or socialists. Okay. I stand with the biblical promise that God made to Abraham that he would return his people back to the land of Canaan / Palestine, is what it's called now, because of a promise he made to Abraham, not because the Jewish people was living righteously before God. You see what I'm saying? So a lot of people say, well, I'm pro-Jew, I'm pro-Jew, I'm pro-Jew, I'm pro-Israel, I'm pro-Israel. But my question is, why are you pro-Israel? Are you pro-Israel or are you pro-biblical Bible? I'm pro-Bible. Because the Bible teaches in the book of Revelation that the 7-year tribulation, I'm getting a little theology here, for those of you that kind of understand this biblical theology, the Bible does teach, particularly in the book of Revelation, that the nation of Israel will be persecuted again by a man that we all as believers know or should know, known as the Antichrist, the incarnation of Satan himself. He's going to come against the nation of Israel and initiate a persecution that's going to make Hitler's persecution look like romper room. Why do I say that? Because I'm going to go back to what I said earlier about people having to be careful. People that may be against and it's just my opinion, people that may be against the nation of Israel as a whole because they feel like the nation of Israel is doing, in terms of the government, is doing things that are not savory, that are not right. I've already told you what Derek Gilbert said about that, so you can interpret that the way you want to interpret it. They tend to, when they look at it that way, they tend to say, they tend to get mad at the nation of Israel as a whole. And every Jew that they see they have something, get angry and get frustrated. Oh, your people just, y'all just doing this. And I said this in a video several years ago, especially when it came to something that Kanye West said that I didn't agree with. I believe people have to be careful, because even if you don't agree with certain things that the Israeli government is doing, do not allow that to poison your mind towards all Jews as a whole. Because, and particularly when I say all Jews, I mean ethnic Jews. Just because they're Jewish don't make them religious. They're ethnic Jews, but they don't make them religious. They could be an atheist. Okay? I feel like we shouldn't allow that to poison our perceptions, particularly as Christians, of the Jews as a whole. We should adhere to what the biblical narrative states about the Jewish nation, that God made a promise to Abraham, and because God is a promise keeper, he's going to fulfill his word he told to Abraham in spite of what the current Jews may be doing. Okay? He's fulfilling his promise to Abraham because he's a promise keeper. Now, the book of Revelation, going back to that, it does teach that there's going to be a horrible persecution initiated against the nation of Israel again. Okay, it's going to happen again. And my point is saying this, is that I believe people have to be careful with their view overall of the nation of Israel, because we don't want to play a part in helping to incite anger, frustration, and even to some extent, if we're not careful, hatred towards Jewish people in general. Because in order for the Antichrist to come forward and initiate a global persecution of the Jews, most people will have to hate on the Jews in order to do it. They have to be supportive of it. You may be saying, what do you mean by that, Mr. Bolin? Let's go back to Hitler. How did Hitler get a vast majority of Germans to come against the Jews in Germany? He demonized the Jews, did he not? If we read history, Hitler demonized the Jews. He would show videos and give pamphlets. He would get in contact with his minister of propaganda, Joseph Goebbels, okay, who was literally had the title of minister of propaganda. Can you believe that? Minister of propaganda, ain't that something? In your face. And they would make movies where they would show, and I've shared this in a video before, they would show rats scurrying against the sides of buildings and so forth. And then they would show pictures of Jews, ethnic Jews in that area, and equate the rats with the Jews and saying the Jews are nothing more than vermin. They're rats. We need to get rid of them. And they would spread this kind of rhetoric and propaganda to many of the German people. It was designed to poison their minds towards the Jews so that Hitler and the Nazis would have an excuse on exterminating them. Now let's fast forward to today, all right? I'm not into this anti-Semitism and all this, but what I'm trying to do, I hope people catch what I'm trying to say, because I'm trying to put my words in a way where people will understand what I'm trying to say, is we have to be careful. We have to point out what is wrong that the Israeli government is doing, no doubt about it. But I feel like we shouldn't allow, especially those of us that know the word of God, not Christians, to poison our heart towards all Jews. You can disagree with certain things and you can criticize the Jewish government and even criticize a particular Jewish person that you know, but we have to be careful that we don't allow that to poison our minds to the point where we hating on them. Because we don't want to be a part of the individuals that helped breed another persecution that, according to the book of Revelation, is going to happen. I'm just saying, man. And I didn't mean to preach like this, but I'm just trying to give you guys my side of the story, what I think about the whole thing, okay? I'm not anti-Jewish or any of that. What I am, I'm pro-Bible. Jesus Christ came specifically, who was a Jew, came specifically for the Jews. That's what the Bible says. He said, I came for the sheep, but there are other sheep, he says, are not his fold. Them I will also bring in. Those other sheep are symbolically Gentiles. The word Gentiles is a term that the ancient Jews used to refer to all people who are not ethnic Jews. That's what it was. It was a condescending term, true. And I'm not going to get into the detail of why it was condescending and why many of the ancient Jews looked condescendingly on people and so forth. I'm not going to get into all of that. That's maybe for another video, okay? But that was a term that was given to it. Because Christ's death on the cross procured salvation for every individual in every ethnic group who put their personal faith in Jesus Christ. Okay? But my point is that salvation is first to the Jew. But salvation is not, biblically speaking, in the New Testament, is based on the spiritual saving rather than a physical saving. And like I said, I'm going to get to all the detail of that. But yes, that's what Christ came to do. Okay, so that's my belief on that. And according to the book of Revelation, it states that the nation of Israel will look on him whom they have pierced and will be saved in a day. Meaning that the nation of Israel, at this time when the Antichrist is coming against them and persecuting them and so forth, will look and see that when Christ comes back, they will see that he was truly the true Messiah that they had rejected in the Gospels under the pressuring of the leaders, the Sadducees and the scribes and the Pharisees, who pressured the ancient Jews to reject the Messiah Jesus Christ and have him crucified. They would find out that the one that was crucified thousands of years ago was the one that was really their Messiah. And they would get saved in a day. Saved spiritually. Yeah, I could go on with that, but that's my stance on that. And I know this video went longer than normal, but I wanted people to get an understanding of where I stand on this, even if you don't care where I stand on it. But I wanted people to get an understanding of where I stand on this. So going back to what Trump said, is it going to be a golden age? We'll see. I don't know about all that, because I believe in the Bible, and I believe many of the prophecies of a vast majority of the prophecies of the Bible have already come to pass. And if a vast majority of the prophecies of the Bible have already come to pass in certain areas, then it only stands to reason that the other prophecies are going to come to pass as well. And this is in reference to the nation of Israel as a whole. This is in reference to a new world order or a global government, a global one-world religion, and a global economic system, which will probably be a microchip in your head and on your hand. Boom. I'm just saying. Okay, so I'm waiting for that to happen, but I pray that I'm not here when it happens, because it's going to happen. We see it now. So in reference to this being a golden age that President Donald Trump said, with the freeing of these Jewish hostages and so forth, that remains to be seen. We'll see. But nevertheless, that's my words on that. What do you guys think about what Trump said? Leave your comments in the comment section below. Like, share, and subscribe to my channel. God bless you all, and see you again.